Scorpio, you have always felt things a little deeper than you let on, like there's a quiet current beneath your skin that never really settles, only shifts, only waits. Something in you has been moving lately, almost like a tide turning in the dark, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. You may not have named it yet, but it has been there in the pauses between your thoughts, in the way certain memories return with a different weight, in the way your heart reacts before your mind can explain. March 27th to 28th, 2026 carries that same undercurrent. A continuation of something that already began, now drawing you further inward. It feels less like an event and more like a descent, a gentle pull into a space where your emotions begin to speak in a clearer, more honest language. You're not searching for answers in the same way anymore. Something inside you already knows where to look. There's a quiet recognition forming, the kind that doesn't arrive all at once but unfolds slowly, like light filtering through deep water. The experiences you've carried, the moments that left an imprint, the connections that shaped how you love, they've all been leading you here, gathering meaning beneath the surface. And maybe you've started to notice it. The way your reactions feel different, the way certain patterns feel heavier to carry, the way your inner voice sounds steadier, more certain. As if something within you has reached a point where it's ready to see clearly, to feel fully, to understand without turning away. This moment isn't loud, it isn't rushed. It moves in silence, in depth, in truth. It asks for your presence, your honesty, your willingness to sit with what rises instead of pushing it aside. Because within that space, something begins to come together, not as a sudden breakthrough, but as a quiet integration. If you feel this shift, comment 777 below. And as this feeling continues to unfold, you may start to see how everything that came before was gently guiding you toward what is now ready to be revealed. There's a way you can trace it back if you slow down enough to feel where it all began. Early March carried a softness, almost like a door opening quietly. A moment where love felt possible again, where something inside you leaned forward with a kind of cautious hope, as if the past had loosened its grip just enough for you to breathe differently. And then, almost immediately, something shifted. The tone changed. What once felt light started to feel heavy, grounded, real. Situations revealed themselves with a sharper edge, conversations carried weight, and the space between what you imagined and what actually stood in front of you became impossible to ignore. That contrast, it stayed with you. A few days later, it went deeper. Not on the surface, not in obvious ways, but underneath, where your patterns live. You may have caught yourself reacting in ways that felt familiar, almost scripted. The same emotional loops, the same pulls towards certain dynamics, the same instinct to hold on, to fix, to understand more than what was being shown. That's when something started to surface, quietly, persistently. By mid-March, the intensity grew in a different direction. There was a kind of reaching, giving more, offering more, trying to balance something that felt slightly off. You may have found yourself stretching beyond your own limits, trying to maintain harmony, trying to keep something steady. And in that effort, you could feel the weight building. Not dramatic, just undeniable. And somewhere in all of this, a subtle awareness began to form. Not loud, not fully shaped, but present. You started to notice the repetition, not just in others, but in yourself. The way certain feelings returned, the way certain choices felt almost automatic, the way your heart moved toward what it already knew. That awareness didn't come with judgment, it came with clarity. Now, as March moves into these final days, everything feels like it's gathering. Every moment of hope, every confrontation with reality, every deep emotional pull, every quiet realization. They're all meeting here, converging into something that asks for your full attention. Because what unfolds on March 27th to 28th doesn't arrive out of nowhere. It rises from everything you've already felt, already seen, already begun to understand, and it's ready to take you somewhere even deeper. It begins quietly, almost too quietly to notice at first. March 27th doesn't rush in with answers or clarity. It settles around you like still water, smooth on the surface, holding something deeper underneath. There's a pause in the energy, a kind of stillness that feels intentional, as if everything is waiting for you to turn inward. And then, slowly, something starts to rise. Not all at once, not in a way you can easily explain. It comes in layers, an emotion here, a memory there, a subtle shift in how something feels compared to before. You might find yourself sitting with a thought longer than usual, tracing it further, sensing that there's more beneath it than what first appeared. This is where the depth opens. By the time March 28th unfolds, the surface no longer holds your attention the same way. You're drawn deeper into the spaces you usually move past quickly. Feelings carry more texture now. They linger, expand, reveal their edges. What once felt like a simple reaction begins to show its roots, where it started, what shaped it, why it stayed. There's a moment, maybe small, maybe quiet, where something clicks into place. You see it. Not just the situation, not just the other person, but your part in it. The pattern, the pull, the way your heart leaned in a familiar direction again and again, guided by something older than the present moment. And as that awareness settles in, it brings a different kind of clarity, one that feels grounded, almost steady. This is the Scorpio current moving through you, not loud, not forceful, but precise. It doesn't skim the surface, it goes straight to the core, peeling back layers with a kind of patience that feels almost surgical. You're not just feeling, you're understanding what you feel. And with that understanding, something begins to shift. What once felt tangled starts to separate into pieces you can actually see. The emotion, the memory, the meaning you attach to it, they begin to stand on their own. And in that space, you gain something you didn't have before. Distance, perspective, a sense of authorship over your own inner world. There may be intensity here, a wave that feels stronger than expected, a truth that lands deeper than you thought it would. But within that intensity, there's also a strange kind of calm. Because what you're seeing now carries honesty. It feels real, even if it's raw. And that honesty does something powerful. It loosens the hold of what stayed hidden. It softens the weight of what remained unspoken inside you. It gives shape to something that once felt undefined. And in doing so, it opens a quiet door. One that leads away from confusion and into something clearer, something more aligned. You're no longer circling the same questions in the same way. You're stepping into them, standing inside them, letting them show you what they've been holding all along. And as this continues to unfold, you may start to sense that the story you've been telling yourself about your pain is ready to change form, to be seen through a different lens entirely. There's a subtle moment where the intensity begins to soften, not because the depth disappears, but because you start to hold it differently. What felt sharp a few days ago now feels clearer, like something you can sit with instead of something you have to escape from. You begin to see your experiences through a wider lens. Not just what happened, not just how it hurt, but what it shaped inside you. The way your heart learned to read between words, the way you sensed shifts in energy before they were spoken, the way you loved with a kind of depth that carried both strength and vulnerability at once. And slowly, something inside you rearranges. The idea of a broken heart starts to shift its meaning. It feels less like damage, more like evidence. Evidence that you felt deeply, that you gave fully, that you stayed open in moments where it would have been easier to close. That realization doesn't arrive all at once. It unfolds gently, layer by layer, until it settles somewhere deeper than thought. You may notice how your inner voice begins to change its tone, softer, more understanding. It speaks to you with a kind of patience that wasn't there before, as if it finally recognizes the full story instead of just fragments of it. And in that space, something important happens. You begin to relate to yourself differently. There's less urgency to fix what you feel. Instead, there's a quiet willingness to include it, to let every part of your experience have its place, the joy, the confusion, the longing, the moments that still carry weight. You're no longer separating the parts of yourself into what feels acceptable and what feels heavy. You're allowing it all to exist within you as one continuous story. This is where a deeper kind of wholeness begins to form. It doesn't come from erasing what you've been through. It comes from recognizing how it lives within you now. As awareness, as sensitivity, as the ability to connect in a way that feels real. The same places that once held pain now carry insight. The same memories that once felt overwhelming now offer understanding. And within that understanding, your sense of value starts to anchor itself differently. It's no longer tied to how someone responds to you or how a situation unfolds. It begins to feel internal, steady, almost quiet in its certainty. You don't have to reach for it in the same way anymore. It's already present, woven into the way you see yourself and the way you move through your own emotional world. There's a kind of openness that grows from here. Not an openness that gives everything away, but one that feels grounded, intentional, aware. You can feel more without losing yourself. You can connect without dissolving into the other person. You can stay present with your emotions while still holding your center. That balance, it starts to take shape naturally. And as this new way of relating to yourself continues to settle in, you may begin to sense how it quietly reshapes the way you show up in your connections, how it shifts the roles you once carried without even realizing it. You start to see it in the smallest moments, the way you respond when someone pulls away, the way you lean in, offer more, give more, try to understand more, or the way you wait, hoping someone meets you where you stand, sensing a quiet need for reassurance, for presence, for something that feels like safety. These patterns don't arrive loudly. They reveal themselves in repetition, and once you see them, they begin to organize themselves into something clearer. There's the part of you that gives, fully, instinctively, almost automatically. The one who anticipates needs, who fills silence, who carries emotional weight with a kind of quiet strength. And there's another dynamic that often meets it. The pull toward someone who holds distance or who draws you into a space where you reach just a little further each time. You begin to recognize the rhythm between these roles, not as something random, but as something familiar. A loop, a structure, a dance that once felt natural, now appearing with edges you can actually trace. And in that recognition, something shifts. Because awareness changes the way you participate. You pause. Maybe for the first time, you don't move in the same direction. The instinct to overextend softens just enough for you to notice it. The urge to prove your value through effort begins to lose its intensity. You feel the space between what you used to do and what you now choose to do. That space is everything. It's where you begin to stand differently in your connections. You bring your presence without stretching beyond yourself. You listen without absorbing everything. You care without losing your center. And slowly, the dynamic starts to reorganize around that new position. Some connections respond to this shift in a way that feels grounding. There's a sense of mutual recognition, a natural flow where both people show up, where energy moves in both directions. You feel seen, not because you gave more, but because you remained aligned with yourself. That kind of connection carries a steadiness that feels new, yet deeply familiar. Other connections begin to reveal a different truth. The imbalance becomes visible. The weight you once carried stands out more clearly. You notice how much of the dynamic relied on your effort, your patience, your willingness to hold space without receiving the same in return. And in that clarity, something inside you reclaims its position. You stand in your value, not in a loud or forceful way, but in a grounded, undeniable way. You know what you bring, you know how you love. And that knowing begins to shape your choices, your boundaries, your presence in every interaction that follows. This is where connection transforms. It shifts from something driven by need into something guided by awareness. From something you hold together into something that exists through shared presence. From something you adapt yourself to into something that meets you where you already are. And as this new way of relating continues to take form, you may start to notice how it shows up not just in how you connect, but in the quiet decisions you make, moment by moment, about what you allow, what you accept, and what you're finally ready to move toward. It shows up in ways you can actually feel almost immediately. A wave of emotion rises, sometimes without warning, softer in tone, yet deeper in reach. It moves through you with a kind of honesty that feels clean, like it carries a message instead of confusion. You sit with it a little longer now, sensing where it begins, where it settles, what it's asking you to notice. Then the clarity follows. Your thoughts start to line up differently. What once felt tangled begins to separate into simple, direct truths. You know what feels right. You know what feels off. The space between those two becomes sharper, easier to recognize, easier to trust. And from that clarity, action begins to change. Not in dramatic gestures, but in precise moments. You say something you've been holding in. You step back from something that drains you. You choose a response that reflects your value instead of your fear. Each action feels small on the surface, yet it carries a quiet certainty underneath. This is where alignment takes form. You're no longer moving from impulse alone. There's awareness behind your choices now, a steady presence that guides you from within. You feel your way through situations instead of reacting to them, allowing your emotions to inform you rather than overwhelm you. There's a deeper connection forming between what you feel and how you respond. You allow the emotion to exist fully without rushing to resolve it. You give it space, let it breathe, let it show you what it holds. And in doing that, you begin to understand yourself in a way that feels grounded, almost anchored. At the same time, your boundaries begin to take shape naturally. You recognize when something aligns with you and when it doesn't. You honor that recognition. You create space where space is needed. You remain present where presence feels mutual. These choices don't feel forced. They feel like extensions of who you are becoming. There's a quiet strength in this phase. You move with more intention. You listen more closely to your inner voice. You trust the signals your body and emotions send you. And that trust builds something steady inside you, something that doesn't waver with external shifts. You are leading yourself now, not through control, but through awareness. Not through pressure, but through clarity. Each step you take reflects a deeper understanding of your own needs, your own limits, your own truth. And as this alignment continues to settle into your daily life, you may begin to notice how naturally your world starts to respond to it, how the energy around you adjusts, reflects, and meets you in new ways. I choose myself now, and from this place, something even more grounded begins to unfold, carrying you into a space where everything you've realized starts to integrate into who you are becoming. There's a quiet shift now, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. Everything you've moved through still lives within you, yet it feels arranged differently, like the same pieces have found a new place to rest. The intensity softens into something steadier, something you can carry without effort, something that feels like understanding rather than weight. March 27th to 28th becomes less of a moment and more of a doorway you've already stepped through. You can feel it in the way you hold yourself, in the space between your thoughts, in the way your heart responds with more calm, more clarity, more presence. What once pulled you outward now draws you inward, guiding you back to a center that feels grounded and real. And from that center, something new begins to take shape. Not loud, not rushed, just steady. The way you love starts to change, gently, naturally. It carries more awareness, more intention, more truth. You give without losing yourself. You receive without questioning your worth. You stand in your own space and allow connection to meet you there. Something in you, Scorpio, has settled into its own depth. You understand your emotions in a way that feels lived, not just felt. You recognize your patterns without getting lost in them. You move with a kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need validation because it's rooted in something deeper than circumstance. Your value feels present. It's in the way you choose, the way you pause, the way you remain with yourself even as everything around you shifts. It's something you carry now, something that shapes how you see, how you feel, how you love. And as you continue forward, there's a sense that you're no longer searching in the same way. You're walking with yourself. If this journey resonated with you, you can gently like, share, or subscribe, not as a gesture, but as a way of staying connected to this space, to these moments of reflection, to this unfolding understanding. 888, I step into my worth. And as you sit with everything that has surfaced, everything that has settled, you may begin to feel it, a quiet openness ahead, where your next chapter starts to form, one choice, one breath, one truth at a time.